Welcome back to the Deconstruction channel. My name is Justin, and today I'm going to be talking about 7 glaring issues with the Noah's flood story. And this is kind of hard for me because I feel like there are so many glaring issues with the story that finding only 7 of them was a little bit difficult. But here are my 7. Number 1 is nothing was actually accomplished. And what I mean to say is that the stated goal of the flood was necessarily to rid the world of evil and wickedness. Yet that didn't actually happen. Genesis 6:5 states, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. So the Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them all the animals, the birds, and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the Lord's eyes." And then it goes on to state how Noah was such a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. He walked faithfully with God. So Noah theoretically was saved because of his faithfulness and his righteousness. The goal here appears to be that God is going to wipe the wickedness from the earth and then repopulate the earth from kind of a righteous remnant of what was left over. But we know the very first thing after the flood is that Noah plants a vineyard, gets drunk, and then is assaulted, or his wife is possibly assaulted, by their son Ham. So they didn't actually save the right people, according to the text. Moreover, if the goal was to get rid of the wicked people, or at least the wickedness that was on the face of the earth, they forgot to wipe out Satan or any of the angels that committed the sin by sleeping with the human women. So the stated goal of the flood seemed to have actually been missed. Nothing was actually accomplished. And God said after the flood, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood." So here God is even admitting, yes, humankind is sinful and evil and wicked, and apparently there's nothing I could do about it. Well, if that's the case, why in the world did you just send a flood and kill all these people if there was nothing that can be done about it because they're sinful from the start? The second issue that I have with this story is the fact that there's no way to feed all of the animals in the ark. Now, everyone is aware of the problem that there are roughly 6,000 different animals that need to be on the ark, and housing the animals itself is a bit of an issue, but no one actually talks about the food that needs to be upon the ark to feed the animals. For example, bobcats. Bobcats are a small animal. If we assume that this is the member of the cat family that they chose, or a bobcat-like animal, then they need roughly 2 pounds a piece of food every day. So they eat like rabbits and small vermin and whatnot. So what are we going to put on the ark for these bobcats to eat for nearly an entire year? We need roughly 1,400 pounds of food just to feed 2 bobcats. So how are we going to get food for the rest of the animals? Moreover, the food of the bobcats and the other carnivorous animals are meat. It has to be fresh meat, freshly killed. You can't just stock up thousands and thousands of pounds of dead animal carcasses for the meat-eating animals and then just set them about the ark for an entire year. The meat is going to go rancid and it's going to kill the people that end up eating it. So what in the world were they feeding the carnivorous animals? And this doesn't even take into account that there are other issues with the herbivores. For example, elephants eat a tremendous amount of food, hundreds of pounds of food a day. Where are you putting that many herbs for these animals to eat? It would go bad in a matter of days, even if you had grain to feed the herbivores. First of all, not all herbivores can digest grain, but even if there was a miracle and they could, it would go bad itself. Most grain, even barley, would go bad in a matter of months because of the moist climate. It would start rotting almost immediately. Modern grain storage needs airflow and it needs a dry climate, and that is not going to happen in a global flood. It will be incredibly moist anywhere that this grain is stored. But whether it's grain or some type of other herbs, just 2 elephants alone need 200,000 pounds of food to survive this voyage. 200,000 pounds. So we have this problem repeated over and over again for all of the other animals on the ark. The giraffes, the lions. we have a myriad of animals that need a large amount of food. You can't just throw a bunch of animals on a ship and then hope that they don't die or starve to death. And not only that, many of these animals have very specific dietary needs. You can't just give herbs to a meat eater and you can't give meat to an herbivore. They're not equipped to digest it. And what about the animals that need very, very specific diets, such as the koala bear that eats eucalyptus leaves? And what about animals like the three-toed sloth that eats a very specific leaf as well? There are animals that needed to be on the ark that have very specific diets of plants and or animals that are only located in their natural habitat that Noah and his family would not have had access to. This leads me into issue number 3, the division of labor. I live in Ohio and we have a popular zoo here, the Cincinnati Zoo. The Cincinnati Zoo employs over 400 people. 50 of those are full-time zookeepers. 50. And how many animals are at the Cincinnati Zoo? Roughly 1,800. So there are 50 people taking care of 1,800 animals that have an education in how to take care of these very specific animals. But yet the Bible wants us to believe that 8 untrained people who have no background in zoology are taking care of nearly 6,000 animals on a daily basis. This means that each member of Noah's family has to spend time taking care of 750 animals a day, feeding them, possibly even grooming them. Some of them have grooming needs, as well as taking care of their feces. Where is their feces going to be deposited and then disposed of? And then again with the drinking. So all of these animals need cared for while they're on the ark, and there's only 8 people to care for all the animals. The division of labor would not work out. Moreover, according to the story in Genesis, these 8 family members would have had to have known how to take care of the animals, and there's no explanation in the story as to how they learned the skills to take care of these animals. Like I said previously, zookeepers are trained to do their job, yet there was no training for these 8 people. Now, the fourth glaring issue is a problem for the humans and for the animals. How did they get enough drinking water to drink from? They couldn't take it from the floodwaters beneath the boat. They had to capture rainwater to drink fresh water, or they all would have dehydrated themselves. Yet, we are to expect that 6,000 different animals and 8 human beings were able to collect enough water in only 40 days of rain to sustain them for an entire year, which means not only were they collecting enough water to feed all of the animals on board, but they had to have a way to save all of that water for at least the 150 days after the 40 days rain. Some people believe that it was only 150 days that they were on the boat. The story does indicate that it was an entire year. Nevertheless, even if it's only half a year, where are you storing all the water? All of these animals would have died of dehydration, including the human beings. And of course, this leads to issue number 5, which is where all the water came from and where did it go? According to estimates, our atmosphere only contains roughly 3,000 cubic miles of liquid. That sounds like a lot. However, the amount of water that covers the surface of the Earth currently is 330 million cubic miles, which means the amount of water in the atmosphere would never be enough. Even if the entire atmosphere collapsed into rain today, it would only be enough to cover 0.001% of the Earth. And that is it. And we're talking about 2.5 centimeters of water. Now, we're told in the biblical narrative that the floodwaters of the deep opened up. So that can account for where some of the water might have come from, but where did it go? There's no explanation for where the water went after it evaporated. Now, the 6th issue, after the flood subsided and the animals had to disembark, where in the world did they go? They had to migrate from one part of the world all the way back to their natural habitat. Are we to assume that the penguins migrated from the Middle East all the way to the North and the South Pole without dying? Moreover, what did they do for food during the disembarkment? I can only assume that the carnivorous animals, upon leaving the ark, immediately started to ambush the other animals for food, which means every carnivorous animal that had a meal after the ark basically ended an entire species. And what about vegetation for the animals that were herbivores? All of the vegetation on the earth was wiped out. So what were the elephants eating? How are they getting their 200 pounds of food a day? We need some sort of life already on the earth for these animals to live on the earth. But it's clear from the story that everything was dead. And in the same vein, the seventh issue is the loading of the animals. According to the estimate of 6,000 animals, we have to assume that they were loading the animals at a rapid pace because they had only 7 days to load the animals. The instructions from Genesis 7:1 says, "Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate. And also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe out from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." So we are led to believe that there was only 7 days to load all of these animals, which means they had to have loaded roughly 1 animal per minute. We're talking about lions, elephants, giraffes, you name it. 1 per minute from wherever they were located. Is there a staging area? Where were these animals just sitting around waiting patiently to be loaded single file onto the ark? How did 8 people load 6,000 animals onto an ark in a mere 7 days? Not to mention the fact that most of these animals would have wanted to kill these humans in the boarding process. How are we to imagine certain dangerous animals being loaded, such as bears? What about wild cats? And what about snakes? There are so many members of the animal kingdom that would rip human beings from limb to limb if they came in contact with them that it's hard to imagine 8 of them loaded 6,000 of them onto a boat in 7 days. Now, those are my 7 issues with the Noah story, although there are many, many more. I would love to hear your own. Please leave some of the glaring issues with the Noah story down in the comments, and maybe we'll do a follow-up with even more of the glaring issues. And please remember to like and subscribe. This is a brand new channel. Any love I can get through likes, comments, and subscriptions is greatly appreciated.